Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight in-game as well. For these videos I like to use your suggestions for monsters that you'd like to see and learn about. So if, while you're watching this video, an idea suddenly strikes you, a monster that you'd really like to see me draw my interpretation of, or hear the mythology and lore of, then make sure to leave it down below in the comments section, because I add every single idea, no matter how obscure or how popular it is, to my to-draw list, and then the 10 most popular creatures that show up on that to-draw list go to my patrons every single month over on Patreon, who all get an equal chance to vote on which ones of those they'd like to see next. So yeah, make sure to leave a little monster in the comments down below. And if you want to get even more control out of the channel and vote on which monster you want to see next, then head over to my Patreon page. I'll make sure to leave a link down below in my description box so you can join our community there if you'd like. If you do, then thank you very, very much. All of your support really helps to make this channel what it is and lets me make these videos every single week for you. Now, today's suggestion of Death Knights, arguably the edgiest creatures in the game, came from the fantastically named A Wannabe Merlin, all the way back on my Gibbering Mouth video. So thank you so much for your patience and for waiting on this fantastic monster. I had tons of fun researching this one, so let's get started with today's video on Death Knights.
You speak of justice, of cowardice. I will show you the justice of the grave and the true meaning of fear.
The infamous Death Knight has been a part of D&D since 1981's Fiend Folio, a supplement that also brought with it creatures like the Gith, Slads, and other fabled icons of D&D lore. Like these creatures, Death Knights are some of the most popular and well-loved creatures in D&D. So much so that they've found their way into other fantasy media, either as some simple inspiration in things like Dark Souls, where arguably the protagonist character could be seen as a Death Knight, or through more direct implementation in games like World of Warcraft, where Death Knights are not only playable characters, but are some of the main plot-driving NPCs as well. Death Knights are very much the combat equivalent of a lich in Dungeons & Dragons. Where once a lich was a wizard seeking immortality to continue their studies, or perhaps simply delve into the dark magic of death, at least according to 5th edition, a Death Knight in Dungeons & Dragons was once a noble paladin, whose fall from grace sees their body consumed by dark powers that keep them affixed to this mortal plane as a husk of their former selves. Their body, slowly rotting and degrading, kept stable through necromantic energy. Their knights, foot soldiers and other comrades in their order swapped out for mindless zombies and skeletons who follow their orders without question, make Death Knights not only solo titans on the battlefield, but also military commanders, as intelligent in death as they were in life, and with all of their deadly martial prowess preserved. The 5th edition monster manual also makes note of the fact that Death Knights are capable of casting divine magic, as their bodies and minds are in some way still tied to the gods that gave it to them when they were paladins, and thus the magic that they commanded in life is still theirs to wield, although they are unfortunately completely incapable of healing, as they abhor the nature of life in all of its forms. Some DMs will make note, or make use rather, of the fact that a paladin might be seen to be stealing the magic of their god in undeath, and thus this affront to their former deity may be the reason that causes someone to need to destroy this creature. However, other DMs like myself will make a point of pointing out that paladins, at least in 5th edition, gain their magic from their oaths, from the promises that they swear, the pacts that they make with their deity, the promise of justice, of retribution, and so on, and that their magic comes not necessarily from their deity, but from the pact and oath that they make. So, if they manage to pervert and twist the oath that they make, but still conform to it, following the letter of the laws that they have written and sworn to, but not the concept, they can still draw upon this magic, because it is the oath that gives them power, not the deity. But that raises even more questions, because in truth, not much is solidly known about how Death Knights are created, or rather, too much is sort of known, so it gets a little bit confusing to find out what is accurate. Again, as a DM, this is yours to play around with, and you can make up whatever rules and requirements you need, because the requirements to become a Death Knight have changed so wildly from edition to edition, and some players and DMs may be more attached to different versions than others. This leads me to think that there is not actually a truly canonically accurate version of how a Death Knight is created. For example, as I mentioned earlier, in 5th edition, In the monster manual, the book makes note of the fact that a paladin needs to fall from grace in order to become a Death Knight. In some stories, evil fey creatures can trick people into becoming Death Knights. Some sources lay claim to the fact that any class with a combat focus can become a Death Knight, and just as many mention the fact that Orcus, the demon lord of undeath, is required to truly raise someone from the dead as these blighted swordsmen. So anything from the necromantic pits that you can conjure up is open to you. I'd be intrigued to hear how Death Knights are formed in your own campaign setting, if you have your own version or if you stick to some book in particular, but make sure to let me know down in the comment section which version you choose to use, or if you have your own version, because I always love hearing your stories. One of my favourite interpretations of the Death Knight creation legend comes from Dragon magazine. In October 2007, Matthew Sarnett wrote The Ecology of the Death Knight in issue 360. In this telling, Death Knights operate very much like liches, but in the place of their phylactery, a martial weapon is required. The user's soul is magically bound through mystical rituals to their weapon, so that their rate of corporeal decay is slowed to that of their well-honed and magically crafted metal. And just like a lich, the 5th edition monster manual mentions that a Death Knight will always return from death, even if its body is completely destroyed, until it is convinced or somehow tricked into atoning for its life of wicked deeds, and seeks redemption. Only then can it escape from the purgatory of its undeath and truly be released to the afterlife. It's this quest for redemption that many DMs use as a means to allow players to choose some homebrew version of a Death Knight class to play, as they seek redemption for their cruel past in order to finally die. Something that I, as an extremely edgy DM, thoroughly approve of. In the ecology of the Death Knight version of the creation story, the Death Knight's equivalent of a phylactery, known as its soul weapon, is described as follows. The ritual to become a Death Knight tears the ritual caster's soul from its body and binds it to the weapon used in its ritual. The ritual caster dies, as the living parts of its body are consumed in unholy green fire. From that conflagration rise the soulless bones of the living person, guided by an evil intelligence that no longer needs a brain for its vile thoughts, and an endless hatred that no longer requires a heart to drive its dark passion. A soul weapon is similar to a lich's phylactery, in that the Death Knight's soul resides there instead of in its body, but in most other ways, the soul weapon is the opposite of a phylactery. For a lich, its phylactery is a weakness that allows its permanent destruction, but a soul weapon is the Death Knight's greatest strength. A Death Knight literally wields its soul as a weapon. The soul weapon's strikes burn with death, and at the Death Knight's command it can become immaterial, passing through armour and shields to strike at its foes' unprotected flesh. A Death Knight need never fear its soul weapon's destruction, for with a thought the knight can restore the weapon to wholeness and unwholesome power. If the weapon is taken, a Death Knight becomes weakened and distracted, distraught by the loss of its soul, and consumed by the need to recover it. However, no other creature can wield a Death Knight's soul weapon without feeling despair, so few can withhold a soul weapon from a Death Knight indefinitely. I was so pleased to see Death Knights in the 5th edition monster manual, and their stats definitely do not disappoint. As would be expected, they're a medium undead and are chaotic evil. I feel like lawful evil might suit them, but then I guess they have cast off the shackles of their former life as a paladin. But if, like me, you like the idea of any class with a weapon being able to choose to become a Death Knight, if they're willing to sacrifice their soul, then perhaps chaotic is better no matter what. You can choose their alignment based on what the person's alignment was in life. Using their tough plate armor that they maybe used in life, they have an armor class of 20 and have a whopping 19d8 plus 95 HP, makes them more than a challenge on the battlefield at challenge rating 17. They're obviously immune to necrotic and poison damage because they don't really care what happens to their body, and they are undead. As a creature no longer reliant on their muscles and bones to keep them active, they're immune to exhaustion and being poisoned. And because something this edgy wouldn't be great if it can be afraid, they're also immune to being frightened. They speak Abyssal and whatever other languages they spoke in life, potentially due to their decaying body, the magical wards within, or their own skill. They are resistant to magic damage, meaning they have advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. The Death Knight's frankly terrifying combat abilities start with its 20 strength and 11 dexterity. It also has 20 constitution, so it's about as powerful as an adventurer can become. It has 12 intelligence, 16 wisdom, and importantly 18 charisma, which it uses to command its undead legions, which it uses in a rule called Martial Undead, which means unless the Death Knight is incapacitated, it and other undead creatures of its choice within 60 feet of it can feel its rallying call and some degree of the inspiration that it would have provided in life, allowing them to have advantage on saving throws against features that turn undead. It can also make 3 attacks with a longsword, its rune weapon, per turn, which deal 1d8 plus 5 slashing damage, or 1d10 plus 5 slashing damage if used with 2 hands, plus an additional 4d8 necrotic damage on top of that, as necrotic energy courses through this hellish weapon. It can also, as a reaction, choose to parry, causing the Death Knight to add 6 to its armor class against 1 melee attack that would hit it, as long as it can see the attack coming and that is made by a melee weapon. On top of which, as mentioned before, the Death Knight has some fairly considerable magical abilities. As a remnant of the holy energy that it commanded in life, once per day, the Death Knight can cast something called Hellfire Orb, in which the Death Knight creates something akin to a fireball, causing a 20-foot radius sphere centered on a point that it can choose within 120 feet, causing all creatures who fail a dexterity saving throw to dodge out of the way to take 10d6 fire damage and a further 10d6 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. In addition, it's a 19th level spellcaster, using its massive charisma stat to cast spells, wherein it can use Destructive Wave, dealing necrotic damage, it can banish people, cast Staggering Smite, Elemental Weapon, it can Dispel Magic, Hold Person, cast Magic Weapon on itself or others, or perhaps most lethal actually, Command Compelled Duel and Searing Smite, all favourites of the Paladin. It seems like the trick to defeating a Death Knight is to definitely stay at range. It feels like an archer is the best way to get through its armour. It's terrifying 20 AC, because its parry attack that adds to its AC can only be used on melee attacks. If you engage it in close quarters combat, it has that absolutely unsettling strength score and lots of combat attacks, 3 massive sword slashes, and also let's not forget Destructive Wave, which can do a total of 10d6 damage of both thunder and necrotic, which you can do twice, and it's resistant to spells. So it definitely seems like a very skilled archer being able to be kept at extreme distances is the only way to really defeat this creature easily. Just so long as they can stay out of the range of command, and Compelled Duel might cause this archer, the saviour here, to get close enough to be utterly obliterated by this. But obviously there's also that terrifying Hellfire Orb, which the Death Knight only gets 1 of per day, so hopefully if you can avoid that, you might be able to survive an encounter with a single Death Knight. Hopefully they don't have too many legions of undead under their command, and you can safely stay at a distance. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I really loved drawing this. I loved researching Death Knights, some of my absolute favourite creatures in D&D. So I hope you enjoyed the video too, and if you did, please make sure to let YouTube know if I'm doing a good job by leaving a little like or a little thumbs up down below, favouriting this video and sharing it with the rest of your party, just in case you have a Death Knight to contend with and you need to figure out how to beat them. Whenever you do that, it really helps the channel, so thank you so much for helping me if you did enjoy today's video. If you really want to raise this channel from the dead like the Death Knight that it is, and help us out massively, then you can also subscribe so that you don't miss a video that I make. I make at least 1 video a week, but also there's sometimes some on Fridays as well, so hopefully you won't miss out on those, you'll get notifications. Or even more than that, if you can, we also have a Patreon page where all of my backers get lovely rewards, like having their names added to the end of the credits of all of my videos, getting shout outs on all my social media, having one-on-one chats with me, or copies of all of my illustrations, including this one. So thank you so much if that's something you choose to do, but if not, beware what bargains you make, what lengths you'll go to find immortality in this world. You may find yourself the rotting husk, the emotionless, damned knight that is the Death Knight. Don't trade your soul for your weapon. And until next time, happy monster hunting.